Hi, everyone. Feel free to, cameras on, off, whatever you want. Welcome to an alumni chat with Adam Brock. My name is Evan Basio. I'm the front desk coordinator. You all know me. You're either peer advisors or ambassadors. But yeah, it is super nice to have you all here today for our chat. And we're also joined by Suzanne.
So I think I know all or most of you as well. I'm Suzanne Willever, Manager of Outreach and Communication for Education Abroad. And I'm so pleased that one of our former ambassadors, Adam Brock, will join us today. And Evan has prepared a nice introduction for Adam. So Evan.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. Adam is one of our esteemed study abroad ambassador alums. So Adam studied abroad twice. He went on the Temple Summer in Germany and Summer in Northern Ireland programs as a student. He was a mechanical engineering graduate from Temple University. And he also received a Fulbright to teach English in Austria. So that's where Adam is right now. And I'm sure we'll get into that today, super exciting. So while Adam is living in Austria, he also is, very involved with, local social life, coaches, ice hockey teams, and what else, Adam? You have a very impressive background. Oh, and today he's here to talk to us about a book that he is writing, his first book, a memoir entitled My Song to Sing. So we're really excited to hear about that as well. Suzanne, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so just want to say the format of the session today will be a Q&A. So Evan and I will ask some questions of our guest today, Adam, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A for all of you at the end. So we will ask that you leave your selves on mute just during the Q&A portion, and then you can feel free to make use of the chat if you want to comment or ask any questions, and then we will draw from the chat at the end, or you can feel free at that point if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourselves to do that at that point. So without further ado, we'll dive right into the questions for our guests. So
yeah, thank you for the introduction, Evan. It's great.
Your story is so inspiring. So I hope it will provide some inspiration too for so many of the students who are here today who are sort of on the precipice of graduating, or even thinking about what life looks like a year from now. So I hope that your story will provide a lot of inspiration for them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So our first question, can you just tell us a little bit about your experience at Temple, what led to your major and minor, and how you ended up choosing to study German?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Adam Brock. I grew up just outside of Philadelphia in Plymouth Meeting. I went to high school, Plymouth Meeting as well. And coming out of high school, my original thought was that I was going to pursue physics and become a physics teacher, probably do a master's in education after my undergrad, and look for a high school teaching job right after. And as we can tell, clearly something changed in the last 4 years that brought me across the Atlantic, and now speaking to you 6 hours ahead in Austria. And I have no regrets, and it's been a really fun ride. But Temple for me always seemed kind of the natural option. I mean, my mother and my dad's father both graduated with degrees from Temple. I really liked, not only when I was a student, but also a prospective student, Temple to me seemed to be a school that offered a variety of different opportunities. Regardless of what I studied and what I did, there were always other things to do, whether that was, as I turned out to be, an engineering major studying abroad twice, or at the time a physics major in the beginning, getting involved with music, and all the other activities I never even touched while I was at school. So it's really nice to see that everything is still going on like that despite the pandemic. And for me, it was the breadth of opportunities that really was the biggest reason I came to Temple. I was also looking for a school that was close to home. So for me, right from Plymouth Meeting is only around half an hour, 40 minutes away. But right, so like I said, I entered as a physics BS major. I ended up switching my major in my second semester, so midway through the spring. To be honest, I actually didn't have the best freshman year. I think a lot of times people go into college and there's this it's this shiny idea that everything is going to be great and work out perfectly and all of that. And for many of my friends, that was the case. But for me, I wasn't particularly content with my program in the beginning. Doing life for me was just okay. And in my first semester, I really was kind of searching around, trying to find what it was that was really going to, I don't know, kind of kickstart my time at Temple. And what that actually turned out to be was my first study abroad program in Northern Ireland. Like I said, I switched to mechanical engineering in the spring because I still had an interest in teaching potentially physics or math, something down the line as an educator, but also knew that in theory, at least through an engineering program, I would also be prepared for any type of professional or industrial positions as well. So I switched my major to mechanical engineering in the spring. I got involved with music throughout my first year, which I would continue to do through subsequent semesters. But, and to be quite honest, though, when I think about when the good times really started at Temple, it was in Derry in Northern Ireland. And after that, really never looked back, which was really kind of fun. And one of the things among most of this story that we're discussing today that's ending up in my book, which we can talk about with a later question. But right, yeah, absolutely, Amanda. Yeah, it's, you know, it was interesting in the process, not only of looking back to the writing, but in making friends or just meeting different people. I think the idea of your freshman year not going perfect is something that I think a lot of us encounter in one way or the other. But to me, there was always kind of this stigma of everyone wants to kind of not pretend, but of course we want things to be going well. So it's more preferable to think that they're going well, right? But, and then, you know, there's nothing wrong with things not going according to plan. And for me, to be quite honest, and I was writing about it a few days ago, if I didn't have that kind of conflict in my first semester, I would not be speaking to you from Austria right now. It's just things would have gone completely differently. So I am thankful that for me, I spent that first year kind of searching around and then ending up in Ireland and then everything kind of moving from there. Right, so with respect to German, is another thing, you know, to be honest, I didn't think I would study abroad during college. I just never even thought about it. I mean, coming out of high school, I wasn't even aware. And of course, Temple has all these study abroad opportunities in addition to everything else I knew already existed. So that worked out really well, and I'm very thankful for that. But so I said I went to Derry in summer 2017 and had a fantastic time. And that was my first trip to Europe. And I caught the European travel bug after that. I didn't know when I was coming back, but I knew I was going to find a way, if I could, through Temple or after school. And towards the middle of my junior year, it started to become that time where we really needed to focus on, okay, what are you going to at least try to do after school, whether it's applications for graduate school or teaching programs or looking at internships for jobs, right? That was for me and many of my friends, that's the critical time we start thinking about these things. And so like I said, at that point, I was still studying engineering, and I had originally planned on doing a graduate degree in education, either science or math, something like that. But in all honesty, I was looking for something else at the time. I knew there had to be other opportunities out there. I still wanted to go abroad again. And I was determined to see if I could make something else work. Perhaps I'll end up in graduate school for education later. That's one of the many potential things I've thought about after this program. But at that point in time, I was looking for something else. And it just it worked out that I had always had an interest in Germany. I mean, my family's German, and I have some of my best friends at school either majored in German or minored or learned the language. And they suggested to me, well, you know, there's a language program in Leipzig that you could always go to. And one of my friends was an alumni of that program from summer 2017. And she said, you know, if you take German 1 in the spring, so spring 2019, then you'll be qualified to go to Leipzig. So I said, on New Year's Eve, honestly, I said, well, I might as well try this thing out because why not? You know, the engineering curriculum is fairly rigid, but I was lucky to have enough space for elective space throughout my 4 years to try different classes. As I said, get involved with music, take some music courses. And I had the 4 credits necessary for German 1 enrolled. It was fantastic. I hadn't taken a foreign language since my sophomore year of high school, learning Spanish, and kind of all those memories started to come back, and I realized how much I honestly missed it. And so I took German, I applied to Leipzig, was accepted, went there, also had a fantastic time. I mean, a very different experience from Derry. I mean, it was my first time living or being in a foreign country, trying to speak a language that was not my first. It was a rather humbling experience too, which I think in the long run is a good thing for all of us to be in these uncomfortable situations, which study abroad usually provides in one way or another. And right after that is when we worked towards Fulbright, and thankfully accepted, and now here in Austria. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Would you say that there are any skills that you gained from studying abroad twice that you still use today?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I even though both programs were just summer programs, only around 4 weeks in length, to me, it's amazing what you can still do in a concentrated period of time overseas, regardless of where you are. I think regardless of what you're doing, you're setting yourself up in a scenario where you're going to be, like we said, exposed to new challenges, or you're just going to collect a very different set of experiences than we might, in my case, a normal summer at home or whatever. So the few things that come to mind, the first kind of related to that point is you gain the confidence to put yourself out there. And now for me in an English-speaking country, this wasn't as difficult as in Germany, but still, as a stranger in a foreign town for Derry, I mean, everything is new and you need to explore to find out everything. And our program directors specifically really did not show us around at all before they let us loose and said, figure it out. And I'm so thankful that that's how they decided to do it, because you're really forced to go and, okay, where is this food store? What are the best pubs in town? Am I setting myself to do this or that right the most efficient way possible? And of course, meeting at that point local Irishmen and women and just getting that Northern Irish experience, or really Northern Irish and Irish, since Derry is on the border. But really, also in Leipzig, I mean, that was taken to the next level, where in my first few days, right, you're scared to go to the grocery store because my German is so weak that I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to communicate. I need to just check out these items, or what is this food even called in German? And it's through experiences like that that, to me, coming out of that program, it was perfect for Austria, because I've come here, I've made the mistakes that I made in 2 study abroad programs before, and can carry on moving forward with a bit of humility, a bit of just, okay, we're going to figure these things out. With that confidence comes a degree of independence. I mean, I was never a particularly, I guess, dependent kind of child, whatever, but certainly when you go abroad, whether or not you're with a group or not, you're going to be put in situations where you're fending for yourself. But that, once again, thinking about it now in Austria, I couldn't have asked for better preparation to come overseas now, where in many cases, I am the only person that does my job in my town, for example, or this or that. And honestly, it's really fun. You're out here and you're just living. So that the independent aspect really, really good as well. The other two that come to mind, appreciating different educational systems. I mean, in Derry, right, we were taught by Temple professors. In Leipzig, we were not. And it was so fascinating to learn how Germans view teaching a foreign language to Americans or anyone else learning German, versus how Americans or even German-speaking people in America, right, how we approach these things differently. And as someone, I guess, that wants to teach, to me, that was really fascinating. And I try to carry those skills into the classroom now when I'm working here in Austria. And also, too, maybe perhaps the most important is this idea of becoming a world citizen when you go abroad. I mean, whether or not you're from the United States or not, whether you've been abroad before or not, you get overseas for at least 4 weeks, if not a whole semester or a year, and your perspective starts to change. Whether or not you realize it, that to me was one of the most profound parts of being in Ireland. Is, I mean, at that point for us, it was just a few months into Trump's presidency, and we were getting the Irish perspective of that. You start to view your own country differently, or if you're not from the US and your own country, wherever you've come from. And all of this kind of this good perspective building, I think, is just part of becoming a better citizen wherever you are. And so those are the big things that come to my mind when I think about what I learned studying abroad.
Great, thanks. That was honestly, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of what you said resonates with me, and I'm sure it does with the other students that are here today, and Suzanne and Leslie. And no, that was excellent. Thank you. So you touched on this a little bit, but could you speak more about, what led you to the Fulbright program? How did you find it? How did you pick Austria? And all that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's, once again, I mean, I guess it's funny looking back on it. I touch on this in the book, but just in general, you know, if I had told my high school self coming out of high school that any of these things were going to happen, especially in the order that they did, I would have absolutely never believed you, right? And even as a sophomore, if you told me that we're going to be in this Fulbright application process a year and a half later, I would have told you were crazy. Of course, I'm beyond thankful that despite the speed at which my direction kind of changed looking towards Fulbright versus anything else or grad school, I'm quite fortunate and just happy that things went as they did. So as I said, after Ireland, I was particularly keen on coming back, likely to Europe through Temple in most cases. And I had actually only taken IH1 throughout my first 3 years because I knew that they were offering IH or programs overseas. And I originally thought, well, okay, I'll just take IH2 overseas. And that summer it was either Greece or South Korea. So originally I said, okay, I know I can get abroad. I know I'll take a course I need. It'll be great. But as I said, middle of junior year, you start thinking kind of the beyond from Temple, or at least as we were. And both the programs sound fantastic. And I am jealous of anyone that did IH in Greece or South Korea or Prague or these other programs I know that were ran recently. But I guess I did not see how that was directly going to help me get myself somewhere beyond Temple that I was particularly looking for, or I didn't see that taking me anywhere other than back to American education program immediately, like I mentioned, thinking about when I entered college. And so with thoughts of learning German, a program in Germany, I also then wondered, well, I kept getting emails from this woman named Barbara Dorka, seemed to really know what she was talking about. And I said, I wonder if Barbara knows something about any of this, which of course she does. And we met together sometime either in fall 2018 or spring 2019. And I kind of explained to her my career goals, what I had done before, that I was thinking about Leipzig. And she introduced me to Fulbright and the ETA programs and just other opportunities to go abroad as an American after graduating and either teaching English, studying, researching, or any other type of project. And for me, I was just lucky. All the right things happened in the right time because I did the math, and in taking that one semester of German before Leipzig, going to Leipzig, and then coming back for a full year of German, I would just be qualified to have just enough German language knowledge to apply for any of the programs in Germany, Austria, or any other German speaking program. And as I said, I had always had an interest in teaching. And I thought, well, these seem like it's a fascinating idea. Of course, I had not been to Germany yet, but I couldn't imagine that I would not want to go back after a summer experience there. And just the idea of living in Europe for a year too was something that was always on my mind because, I mean, my biggest mentor at Temple definitely was Ralph Young. He teaches history courses, his Descent in America course. Actually, today I was revising my chapter about our time there, and it was Descent in America that really, it was in that course literally that Ralph said to me, hey, we're doing this program in Ireland, maybe you should come. And then, of course, everything kind of snowballed from there. But wait, why did I say that? I forget, but anyway, right, it was because Ralph had always mentioned he did his PhD in London. He lived in Europe for 10 years during the Cold War. He'd always said to me, Adam, I really think everyone should try to live abroad, or for him specifically in Europe for a year. It just really changes the wiring up in your head, whether that's through study abroad or through Ralph Young, Dr. Ralph Young. Yeah, he teaches history. He's got Descent. He's got a few other general education courses. I know he was in Rome, I think, a few semesters ago. But yes, please, do yourself a favor. It was by far the most impactful course, seriously, that I took at Temple. And it was that course in my first semester, his Descent course, that not only kind of led me to go to Ireland, but just the content of the course. I mean, I could go about that for the rest of this call. Yes, thank you, Leslie. It's just fantastic. I don't want to spoil anything. You find out yourself, and I think you won't be disappointed. But Ralph was in the back of my head, and we had worked together, and he said, a year in Europe, and I thought, well, this might be my way to find a year in Europe, or two, as I'm hoping it's going to be next year as well. And between having enough German language proficiency, meeting with Barbara and her saying, really, I think we can make something out of this. Even before I went to Leipzig, I decided, okay, I'm applying for Fulbright in Germany, Fulbright in Austria, and there was another program run, it's called the U.S. Congress Bundestag Exchange between the U.S. Congress and the equivalent in Germany. And those three applications dominated much of my summer, not only when I was in Leipzig, also working as a blogger, but into the coming fall. And I mean, I don't know if anyone here has already done this, is looking to do it. I will tell you, it is an intense process, but the rewards of all that concentrated work might be greater than you could ever imagine. I mean, that is one of the things that brought me to writing the book now, because in all honesty, I already worked through a decent bit of the structure for my book in the essays with Barbara. And not only is she a great kind of editor and reviewer and just someone to help you with your writing, but if you do the job right, which if you go and try to do something like Fulbright, you must, because it's either all or nothing, in my opinion, on this thing, right? You either go in to win it or you shouldn't try at all, because, I mean, me and my friends, you probably spend 6 months revising the same single-page essays. I think we go through like 11 or 12 drafts by the time we're finally submitting them. And I mean, at that point, I had never worked on something for school as hard as I did for those applications, ever. The closest thing was long-term music auditions, which interestingly, I found similarities with, but at any rate, it was the most intense thing I had done in school up to that point. And so we went through the whole process, submitted, we got the semifinal notification in January, which was great. I guess, oh God, wow, that's 2 Januaries ago. And yeah, I just got really fortunate. I got accepted to both Germany and Austria and the other program. And then, right, so it's like a blessing and a curse, because, okay, I was accepted, but now I'm like, oh my God, you got to pick one. And with COVID coming in, everything just got completely, well, we just knew, we had no idea what was going to happen. And to be honest, I had always assumed I was going to accept the German program if I got accepted. And there was no question. I've been to Leipzig. I applied to be in either South Germany, Southwest, or Southeast, and Leipzig is in Southeast. So why would I go anywhere else? But actually, it was between changes in the pandemic and honestly, this gut feeling, among other things, that the program in Austria was the correct choice, that I actually decided to go forward with Austria and not Germany. And I have no regrets absolutely about that. I thank myself for just listening to my gut, which I think for all of us is always an important thing, because to be honest, the German program didn't even run this year, which of course is one of the reasons. And two, I feel things here, considering the pandemic and all of the commotion that's going on right now, things here have gone quite well. And I just feel really blessed that it didn't get screwed up in the million different ways that it could have been screwed up, honestly. So yeah, that Fulbright, it's a good period. I mean, I don't know, like I said, where everyone is at, but even if you have the slightest thought that you might want to do it, I would certainly talk to Barbara. And even if you don't, I would do research on your own, just because it's not a one in a lifetime chance necessarily, but you might never be able to do it again, or you might never be more qualified than coming out of your degree now. So
absolutely. Barbara Gorka, she's
like the master of all things fellowships and whatnot.
She's amazing. If you've not been paying attention to the Temple news stories about all of our students getting incredible fellowships, we've been doing wonderfully with the Fulbright. One of our other alums just got the first Gates Cambridge scholarship. We had the Rhodes Scholarship. She's such a great advisor. So
she's like the godfather of all of these things going on. Barb's at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned something toward the end there that was actually a great transition to what I wanted to ask you next, was just about what it's like living in Austria now. What are some of the challenges? What's it like teaching there? How are you managing to get your job done and also kind of get out and explore your surroundings? Yeah,
I mean, Fulbright was conceived around 1950, right? So I don't think there's ever been a Fulbright class ever that is dealing with the situation that ours is now all across the world. So it's been, I think, of course, distinctly unique for that reason. And yes, of course, there are many things that are not happening that we would have, to be honest, that I was looking forward to coming over here. But despite the pandemic and just all the challenges we're facing, I felt satisfied with, or honestly, beyond satisfied with where we are. So, right, I live in the second biggest city in Austria, Graz. It's a university city. It's in the south of the country. And I work around 45 minutes south of Graz, near the Slovenian border, actually, it's fun because I just never thought I'd live in this part of the world, this part of Central Europe that's kind of tucked away from anything I had learned about coming over. And so, of course, with that, you're going to learn anywhere you go, anything you do in the beginning of this period is just cool because it is new. Like studying abroad somewhere new, except for me, I knew almost nothing about Austria coming here, other than, of course, German and whatever I had researched on my own. So with respect to the job, right, I work at 2 different high schools. I alternate each week, be from one to the other. And for about the first 6 weeks of my time here in Austria, I came around the end of September, and this is so end of September to end of October. Life here was pretty normal. I mean, Europe in general had a fairly nice summer. I mean, Austria, their daily case rate was like 100, 200 people at tops, which it's almost nothing. It's a country of 10 million, so you can run the stats, but things were good. I mean, things were almost like real life or normal life from everyone I'd spoken to, and even from what I myself experienced at the beginning of my time. And so for those first 6 weeks, I was in person, alternating. My first few classes were really funny just because I remember walking down the hall with kind of like my head teacher at the school, and she introduced me to one of the teachers, and they're like, all right, well, here you go. And they send me into the room, and all of a sudden, like, everything starts, right? We went from 0 to 60, I mean, super quick. And I guess for me, having done teaching programs at school, having been abroad, right, in these situations, it just felt really natural, and we just did our thing. I mean, the first lesson was with their 5th form, so maybe like 13 or 14-year-olds. You're talking about different parts of the US. And it's funny, there's, the German language really has a lot of different dialects, especially in Austria, let alone other parts of Eastern Europe where it's spoken. So here, one of the biggest challenges of my time has actually been trying to figure out what people are saying if we're speaking in German. Regardless of if you study it or not, things just would sound different on a side note. But one of the first questions I got from a student is if I could say the word for squirrel's tail in German, in like Austrian German. And of course, I had never heard this before. It's not even really a real word. But as soon as I say, well, no, I have no idea what is that, of course, the class laughs. And I received that question about 50 times in my first 50 classes with varying degrees of, well, okay, sooner or later, I learn how to say the damn word. And just stuff like that immediately, we would get like a nice environment. Most of the lessons I teach aren't so much about teaching grammar or any of the like mechanics of the language. It's more so with students who have either been studying for 5+ years, or if I am working with little kids, we keep it really basic, kind of go off their questions and work from there. And then, right, so I said that was about the first 6 weeks. After that, things shut down after the fall break. Austria enters its second lockdown. And I taught online more or less for 3-ish months, a few days in person in December. And I just went back in person this week, which was like a breath of life into all of this, COVID madness, because you just see the faces and the sounds and just everything about school that I've always liked. But okay, yes, online, of course. I mean, we all know it is what it is. I wish we used Zoom. They're big on Microsoft Teams in Austria, and I've always found Zoom to be a little easier. But regardless, I think we have the same struggles online as perhaps there are at Temple, right? Sometimes it's getting student engagement. Sometimes it's people just not being in a great state to learn online. Some of the students at the one school I teach at have like 50 hours of class a week, and that's not even homework. And I think, oh my God, like guys, your eyes are on the screen, your whole week. So there's, of course, challenges with that, but we've still, if I can get a few laughs in every class or a few good students that are interested online, we do the best that we can and have moved through topics such as the election, of course, the riot on the 6th, different cultural topics from Mardi Gras to American Christmas, Valentine's Day. We've talked about anything from TikTok to like influential African Americans in US history. I mean, anything goes. My favorite classes, though, to be honest, are the ones where someone will ask a random question and we just go off on tangents for 50 minutes, because there's nothing more like raw language practice than this immediate, well, we're not going to discuss what we're going to discuss, but we're going to do it still. And for me, normally, though, I have the most fun because it's like we're hanging out, but we are doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And I guess I feel lucky I've been able to learn so much about Austria and Central Europe from this job, not only the German aspects with the language, but also just, it's really funny sometimes to get that different perspective, like we talked about that you get on study abroad, except when you're working, or in this case, when you're abroad doing anything with regular interaction with, in this case, 2 kids, right, or high schoolers. They've got some funny stuff to say, and doing it in English is even better because it's still the practice. So my contract ends May 31st for this year. We'll be doing probably some more test preparation oriented lessons in the coming weeks, but I hope one of the cool things about the program in Austria specifically is that you can actually reapply for a second year, which I've done. And so I do hope to be working with my schools again next year, and ideally in a better situation COVID wise. I mean, we'll see, who knows, but that's the idea.
Awesome, thanks. So tell us about your book. How did you decide that you wanted to write a memoir? And, how'd you get started? Where are you now? What's the process
absolutely. And I had always said to myself, I mean, sort of as a joke, also though, I think as an interesting thing, like whenever I become an old man, whenever I decide that I'm an old man, I think it might not be a bad idea to write a book, because you're leaving part of yourself out there, right? I mean, there are many ways to leave legacy or to leave an impact, right, an imprint, but I always thought it'd be cool to write a book. I mean, always loved reading, especially every summer I try to do a few classics, and I figured, why not? I'll do that in like 50 years or whatever. But I was approached on LinkedIn a few years ago by this guy named Eric Kuster, who's a professor at Georgetown. And to be honest, I have not made many real LinkedIn connections with people, but this might have been the one real thing that actually has led to something productive. And we were in touch for 2 years here and there about this program he runs there that helps people who want to write a book without the means or the motivation or the resources to do so. He had a college course, and he literally decided that their project for the semester was going to be maybe not publishing, but writing as much of a book as they could. And he ended up taking that kind of and turning it into this whole program, along with a publishing or kind of a hybrid publishing, sort of self-publishing, sort of through an organization. He structures this whole thing, and had been getting in touch to me about it, I guess looking at my profile, this or that, I don't know. And he reached out again in April, right after COVID hit. And he said, hey, we're running this program in the summer. I know people have some people have extra time now with the virus and things being thrown around. If you're interested, we're doing this again. And I said, okay, that's great. Like, have a good time. I'm going to, do my own thing and figure it out. But the idea kind of grew on me for a few weeks, and I did some research to make sure it wasn't a scam, because of course that's always one of the first steps with anything like this. And well, as I said, you spend over 6 months writing for Fulbright, and I had kind of been in this rhythm of regularly working on writing projects, as well as my senior design project for engineering, where I was like the writing guy. And I knew that with my fingers crossed at that point, that Austria would happen. I knew my summer was relatively free, and that, I mean, we only work here, just like the German program, you only teach 12 to 13 classes a week. So, there is free time. And I don't know, I just kind of thought, well, I had planned to do this in 50 years, but Eric kind of pushed the timeline like extremely forward. And I said, maybe this, if not now, then when type of mentality on, well, all these things are fresh in my mind in terms of what I've experienced, not only in college, but somewhat in high school. And I felt that, well, I have this interesting story about an engineering major that moves to Austria to teach English. Not particularly something I feel like is completely mainstream, or certainly something must have happened, right, as we discussed, to make to that change or to lead me in this direction. And since the book I had already thought about writing as an old man was going to be a memoir, I said, well, maybe I write a story about how all the different things that it took for me going into college as a physics major to have me come out the other side, where I kind of turned around and spit out as an English teaching assistant in Austria. So on one hand, I thought it would be cool. I mean, I've always enjoyed, like I said, writing and reading, and I thought it'd be a cool story to tell on the first hand. But then I thought, okay, well, it needs to be more than just an interesting story, because you're reading both for the author and for yourself. And so one of the things I had always, well, not always, that I felt like I saw too much among my colleagues, friends within the program, is people telling me, you know, man, it's like cool you're going to Leipzig, or this, or another friend going abroad, and they said, I just wish I had done that and hadn't done something else because somebody else told me to do it. And it felt so bad, because we're doing these great things through study abroad, I guess, as everyone here has at least done once, and the opportunities are there, but still people feel like there's this external pressure sometimes to, well, you could, but you won't, because I said that you won't, or you know that you shouldn't. And to be honest, within the engineering program, there's a decent bit of that mentality. And I mean, I went through the engineering curriculum as well. There was nothing different about what I was taught from anyone else. Why was I able to really take a leap of faith on doing something other than engineering and others weren't? And it's not that I think anyone can, but that there's not enough people telling stories about being in a situation where there's one path and you're going to ride the conveyor belt to the end, because either someone tells you to, or there's enough keeping you on that path. And yeah, okay, people are doing these other things, but that's not for me because, and whatever, you can fill in the blank. So I said, maybe this is also a story that I can tell to also show that you can follow in my case, a industrial path through college, and then also end up completely somewhere else. And what I also thought would be interesting is if I could share the things that particularly convinced me that I could take this leap of faith, change my trajectory, and like I said, go all in on Fulbright and have it work out. Because it's easy to say, well, go follow your dreams to someone, but without the means to make that happen, it's okay, yeah, I'm going to go become this thing, and then there's no in between, right? So my book is split into 7 sections, which kind of just worked out in the beginning based on the different things I wanted to discuss. But then I also worked in looking back on, for example, both study abroad programs are their own section, looking at high school, looking at my time with Ralph, looking at things junior year. I found that there were 7 kind of key ingredients for me that were essential in, okay, not only saying you can do this, but you will. And why? Because we've either gone through this experience, you understand that this tool is important for yourself and for all of us, right? Because in this time in college, I think as young adults, we're all faced with the same challenges and questions, right? Everyone wants to become something. We're going to try to figure out how to do that. And of course, things happen along the way that either take us further or closer to, right, our ultimate goal. And I thought, well, okay, maybe this will resonate with an audience more than just engineering majors who are discontent with their studies, because we're all trying to figure out how to get to that, I don't know, that shimmering or like shining place in the distance that we really want to go. Of course, it's easier for some people than others. And I thought, well, the least I could do is explain how it worked for me, with the hope that the reader can then not only ask themselves the important questions about, well, are you going where you want to go currently? Why aren't you if you're trending somewhere else? And what is it going to take to, take an investment in yourself and go do the thing that you want to do because it is your will. And I thought that's an idea that I think can resonate to college students, to high school students. I mean, to anyone at different points in life, because it's not like you stop making important decisions when you graduate school. I mean, that's just not how it works as far as I can tell. So I'm writing the book, as I said in the beginning, I'm trying to write it as much as my story, but also to bring the reader in and engage and make those thoughts that ultimately you can leave the book and then go do your own thing, whether that's a traditional job or whether it's going to teach English in Asia, whatever. And it's cool. My hope is that next year, we're actually going to try to work the book into some of the school curriculums here in the schools I work at in Austria, because we've done a few lessons in both schools because I told my teachers about the project when I was doing my pre-sale, and they were interested and expressed an interest in it. Okay, if your book meets the things that we're looking for in our course text, we'd be happy to have you here as our teaching assistant, who also is the author of this book we're reading. I mean, that's just it would be a really unique situation to really get into the depth of, well, okay, we read this book by an English guy that died 100 years ago. It's a little more relatable when the guy who wrote the book is standing in the front of the room. And I certainly know, I can only imagine as a student how it would have been for me in that scenario. And I suppose the one time that was true is actually Ralph Young uses his own writing in his Descent in America course, which I guess, thinking about it now, is one of the many reasons why, at least for me, that course resonated so much. So yeah, because in our lessons with students from both schools, it was really cool because I got a few individual messages from students after classes were over saying, hey, really thought this was an interesting idea. We're wanting to further certain questions or ideas we talked about, because for them, they're literally going through that questioning right now, as all of you are in your own way in Temple. And I thought, well, that would be really cool for a few different reasons, and might be something that then can propel me past this program to wherever we go. So that's what the idea behind the book is. It's being published in August. I'm currently going through my manuscript, doing all my second draft revisions. I'm kind of like knotting all the chapters together. My biggest struggle on my first drafts was that they were good stories on their own, but they were not cohesive as one. And now I'm threading the needle a little bit and really melding things together. And it's nice. It's feeling more like a book, of course, in its early stages, but things are flowing nicely now. And so I will finish this stage of revisions in April. I then link up with the publisher in May. We do our thing, and it'll come out second or third week in August, right before I hopefully will come back and do this all over again. Although I'm not getting to writing a book again. It's been fun, but you need some time to do something else too. And once again, like I said, I would have never done this without having gone through the Fulbright process. So even if any of you apply and it doesn't work out, or it does work out, whatever, you figure out some things about your life in doing that, as I think Barbara would likely agree. And it's a helpful thing, just outside of all this writing as well. So.
Such an amazing story, and congratulations on having your professors, or your professors, I guess, incorporate your book into the curriculum. That's really amazing.
I know. I'm like, how is this possible? Like, how is this actually what's happening?
That's so cool.
No,
I do want to make sure, I see we already had one question from Amanda in the chat about how Fulbright helped prepare you for your teaching and all. And then I want to invite the others of you too. If you have questions you'd like to drop into the chat, you can do that. Or once we've answered Amanda's question here too, if you want to just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, please. So what was Amanda's question?
She was asking how Fulbright helped you prepare for teaching, if at all. You talked about it a little bit, but maybe in thinking about what your goals for teaching are long term, how it sort of prepared you for that.
So now you're saying the application process, or right now is my question when you say Fulbright?
I mean the program itself.
Here in Austria.
Yeah, like how did the Fulbright program prepare you before they threw you into a classroom?
Oh, I see what you mean. Like any things that they did before we started.
Yeah.
So what normally would have happened is we would have gone for a full week to a city just outside of Vienna, and then done a whole week of English instruction type of preparation courses, of course, meeting the other teaching assistants. That kind of depends on which country you're in. For example, I know Germany does its own thing. Unfortunately, this year, because of COVID, the in-person preparation was canceled, and we had a series of online types of training. To be completely honest, the things I use now are things I learned in college. What they tried to do was good, and we did learn some very important things, whether it was about Austria or the fact that the school system is much more complicated than like the American public system. Ultimately, I think to their benefit, but it's hard to understand unless someone sits down and like explains it for half an hour. So I guess if when you're thinking about Fulbright and you're wondering, well, I don't feel ready, will they prepare me? You should go into your application feeling and knowing that you've done enough minimally at Temple or whatever other things you've already done to prepare yourself, because I think those things, even if we had an in-person orientation, it's those things that are going to carry your application, getting the job in the first place, and then actually implementing them in school, whether you're teaching, researching, or studying like Fulbright offers. I mean, I'm trying to think, my friend in Germany now researching, I mean, it's a different program, but she hardly did any kind of pre-work. They're just going. And so it really depends. Cool.
The next question comes from Liv. She asks, how fluent do you have to be in the language of the country you plan to teach in when applying to Fulbright? And I know that it varies, but maybe you have some insight into,
sure,
obviously your program, but your friends as well.
Yeah, so for European countries, Western Europe, you generally need a decent degree of fluency. I mean, for Germany and Austria, you had to have more or less a rough equivalent of 2 years of college study. Of course, the more the merrier, really. But like I said, I met the minimum requirement with having done 4 semesters of college level German. I also, though, this past summer, I did take an additional online course, which I will say very helpful. Certainly, the more you prepare for the lingual element, of course, the more prepared you're going to be. And for anyone that is waiting for one of these programs or in general, now with Zoom and all of these things, I mean, I took a program. It was me, our Austrian teacher, a Croatian student, and a girl from China. And we spent 2 months together just practicing German over Zoom. I was like, oh my God, never would have thought that would have never been possible without this thing called Zoom. And if you're looking to beef up your application too, whether or not you're taking language classes at Temple, might be an interesting experience that might come fairly cheap too. But anyway, with respect to other countries, I know Spain and France, I think, have a higher bar for Spanish and French than we did in Germany, Italy as well. Once you get out of the realm of languages that are taught at American universities or public schools, there actually usually isn't a lingual requirement. For example, I have a friend, she's doing the ETA in Bulgaria, and you don't need to know any Bulgarian coming in because, of course, I don't know if there's many Bulgarian programs in the US. However, in that case, going back to Amanda's question, they do teach you Bulgarian before you go, either online or when you arrive. My friend that's in South Korea now, she had to have 2 semesters, and she just did about a month and a half of intense Korean language courses to her benefit. I guess this one, from the German perspective, I did learn enough to get by in the beginning, certainly. And I mean, to be honest, the most helpful way to prepare for a program like this is when, before or when my roommates have a friend over and we hang out for 3 hours and you only speak in your foreign language. I mean, that is the stuff that really gets it done. So I guess if you meet your minimum requirement for your program and then commit yourself to going after your language or to pursuing your language seriously while you're there, it doesn't have to be in a program, even if it's just talking to people in a bar, if we can do that whenever you're there. That stuff will keep your skills alive and help them grow too. And I found it's always in the most random moments that these great German speaking opportunities come up, and that kind of makes it fun too. And I imagine it's like that in different countries as well, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, definitely. I mean, you can find that information easily on Fulbright's website. And Barbara also, I'm sure, has a awareness for some of the more popular programs anyway. So yeah. Let's see. What are some tips to make your application stand out? Jennifer, or are you a sophomore or a junior?
I'm a senior graduating in May.
Oh, cool. Okay. No problem. Cool. So what are some tips to make your application stand out? Well, the one benefit that you have is now that you are graduating in May and will be applying for the next cycle, unlike any juniors that would be applying in your class, shall we say, you will have your entire senior year's worth of work, the fact of persevering through the pandemic. I mean, all of these things that a normal applicant won't have. In terms of making it stand out, well, let's see. I know the one thing that we really worked with, Barbara and I, is that it's so funny when if you go through this process, you look at your first draft and you look at your last draft. I mean, mine were not even recognizable. And it's a great thing because it means we did something in the middle. But one thing I think that you find on all successful drafts is that your connection to the country is everywhere. Every paragraph, every other sentence. I mean, some people have more compelling stories with that than others. I was lucky. I was in Germany for 4 weeks. I had all that material to talk about. Maybe you've lived somewhere for a semester. Maybe you've never been. And depending on whatever your background is, you should find ways to connect it to that country because that's ultimately how you sell them on why you and not anyone else should be going there. I don't know anyone. Well, let's see, actually, for example, my Bulgarian friend, she had never been to Bulgaria, does not speak Bulgar, but did debate in high school, and her high school had a really good debate team, and apparently that's huge in Bulgaria. So what does she naturally do? Talk about the Bulgarian national debate team and her connections to that. And so I don't know where you're looking, and if you've already thought of this already, and even if you have, the more ways you find to justify and make them want to bring you in, that's your goal at that point. Yeah, and part of that too also is being equipped and also finding a program that's looking for things not only that you have or done, or the connections also that you might have to your country. For example, some ETA programs, I remember Poland for some reason had a bias towards STEM majors, because I looked at Poland for a little bit, STEM majors to go teach English in STEM classes. Now, okay, that makes sense. If you're a STEM person, easy to go. Australia didn't care. For me, I had to sell why an engineer should go do this because, yeah, standing out, I think it was both standing out in a good and a bad way because, well, how is this engineer qualified? But, oh, wait, if this engineer is qualified, he might be a really unique addition to our program or whoever. And one of the schools I ended up working at is an engineering school here. So it's just funny how these things happen. But end of the day, make them want to bring you by plastering your country all over your application. Barbara will tell you that too, but I can tell you from personal experience, I think that's one of the things that did it. So.
Thanks, Adam. That's some great advice. Does anyone else have any last minute questions for Adam before we say our goodbyes? Can unmute yourself or put it in the chat?
The hour flew by. Wow.
Super, really quickly. I wanted to just mention that you are doing one of the teach-ins for Professor Young as well, right? Can you just let us know what the topic and the date and time of that is?
Yeah, one of the other benefits of taking Ralph Young's Descent in America class is that, well, one, he offers extra credit if you attend this teach-in series, but to be quite honest, forget the extra credit. The teach-ins were in person when I took them when I was a freshman sitting in the 8th floor in Gladfelter, but also just in general, really fascinating way to discuss modern, not always modern, but more recently modern topics that are, I think, particularly relevant to all of us with either professors or students or people that are well equipped to discuss these things. I mean, I know the first one of this semester was on it was on the riot.
January 6th.
Right, it was on the riot. And then I think there's one next week, something related along those lines as well, different. Anyway, I got involved with the teach-ins because I had been going and I worked with Dr. Young as a peer teacher and we just stayed in touch in Ireland and everything. So I did 2 teach-ins on Brexit back when we just got finished with that, if you can believe it, right? But back in 2017 and 2018, we were still looking at, well, what might happen. And the tentative date for our next one is April 2nd. We haven't been in touch in a bit, but that was the plan. And it will be on Germany after Merkel. because the interesting thing this year, along of course with COVID, is that Merkel decided a few years ago she was stepping down this fall. And I mean, I've been following along a little bit as it is, and that the German government and society is trying to find a way, well, who can take the throne of Angela Merkel, who's been a steady leader of, honestly, Western Europe for 20 years. I mean, those are no small shoes or easy shoes to fill. And it will have major consequences for Europe because Germany is such an influential player in the EU. And I know that already her party has nominated kind of her successor, but the other minority parties are jostling around, and it should be an interesting mix of opportunities for the country to change its direction. I just personally hope the far right doesn't make any gains, but we will be discussing all of that on April 2nd. So looking forward to it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. And Evan has dropped a link where you can get more information about the upcoming teach-ins there. And Adam, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing
my pleasure.
your journey. I'm sure you'd be willing to answer any questions if we provide your email
Yes,
address.
absolutely.
To follow up. I've just volunteered you for that. So.
No problem. I could talk about this stuff all day. I mean, the book has forced me to, but in general, it's just kind of fun. So.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much. We will release you from your duties.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm going to go out, get some pizza, and enjoy the Friday night. So, but no, and thank you for having me. This is great. I really appreciate it.
Sounds good.
And
Thank you,
I hope
Adam.
for all of you that this has helped, at least made you think a little bit more about what you are going to at least research for your potential next steps. And see what we all can do in this interesting period that it does offer opportunities for the future. I think if we can find them and are willing to take them. So I'll leave you with that. Cool.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Evan. Take care, Suzanne. Have a nice Friday, everybody.
Thank
Bye,
you
Adam.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.